But I thought I would start off by telling a story that uh, actually happened to me about 30 or maybe even 40 years ago when I was the retail store manager at our Zamzow's Fairview store in the winter. It was one of those winters where everything went okay until about in the middle, and then we got 6 inches of snow, and it froze up and crusted over and stayed that way for, oh, I don't know, a couple of months. Well, people just started coming in the store like crazy, buying chew stop and creosote and every hot pepper or oil and everything they could to try to stop horses from eating their fences and their barns down. And this is something we'd experienced before. Uh, and people would come in and say, "Well, we need to stop these horses from cribbing," but they weren't really cribbing and sucking air. They were actually eating the fences. They were eating the barn. One guy had to brace his barn up because it almost fell down. His horses literally ate his barn down. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out what was different this year. So I started investigating and I started putting 2 plus 2 together. I asked people what they were feeding. And in our area, we have very good alfalfa hay that comes from an area called Dry Creek. And Dry Creek just so happens to be a little higher pH than our lower valley and higher in calcium. I tested that hay and it came out to be about 7 parts calcium to 1 part phosphorus. And most of our hay down in the valley is about 5 to 1, which is still way out of balance, which is one of the reasons we don't recommend feeding straight alfalfa. But that wasn't the only thing that was going on. These people were feeding that hay in previous years and didn't have so much of a problem. And what was it about the wood that they were eating? When I'd go out and visit their stables and ranches and so on, I noticed that they were eating the lodgepole pine first, and then they would eat at the other pine board. There were their pine and fir making up the fences or the barns. So I started sampling those and sent them off to the lab. And I found the difference between regular pine and lodgepole pine, which is what most of our gates were made out of, which is what they were eating the most of. Lodgepole was higher in phosphorus than the other wood. So I thought, okay, aha. And they're feeding alfalfa hay that's higher in calcium and lower in phosphorus. Well, these horses must be trying to access more phosphorus. But why is this different from ordinary years? Well, 2 and 2 together, pastures are mostly grass, not legumes or alfalfas or clovers, and grass is higher in phosphorus than calcium. So when they were feeding the alfalfa, the horses could still get some of the dry grass and some of the grass out in the pasture and so on to balance out that calcium to phosphorus ratio. So in a nutshell, what had happened is that winter, because they couldn't get to the grass and because they were being fed this high calcium alfalfa, calcium to phosphorus, it created a craving in the horses. Horses are still one of the species that can still free choice what they need because their hypothalamus tells them you need to eat this because it's got something in it that you need. So we started supplementing a higher phosphorus in our salt mixes, and it stopped. It stopped within a day or two. So we realized that was the problem and that was the solution quickly. We tried many things. We tried feeding straight phosphorus, which is dangerous because horses can absorb their phosphorus better than calcium, and it's really easy to throw them way out of balance to the side of phosphorus over the calcium, which is even a little bit more dangerous. So it's important that you feed a calcium to phosphorus with a ratio. You need to increase the phosphorus, but you still need the calcium to go along with it, along with magnesium and some of the other elements to balance it out.